Here then, for your viewing displeasure, are the top 10 worst shows of 2023. Number 1. The Idol. This is the actual description of The Idol, a lurid and sleazy show on HBO. After a nervous breakdown derailed pop star Jocelyn's last tour, she's determined to claim her rightful status as the greatest and sexiest pop star in America. Her passions are reignited by Tedros, a nightclub impresario with a sordid past. The Idol tries so hard to be edgy and coolly shocking that you start to feel sorry for it. It is so desperate to deliver the veneer of something objectionable, so focused on being provocative and pushing boundaries that it doesn't worry about telling a good story, or even doing anything to actually be subversive. For a show that attempts to satirize how out-of-touch successful celebrities can be, it's ironic to see just how embarrassingly pleased the people who created this seem to be with themselves. Oh my god, Lily Rose Depp, you're so edgy, so indie, so raw. Oh my god, Troye Sivan, you're so now, so undefined, so bohemian. Piss off. It's not in on the joke, it is the joke. Whoever made the call to cancel this needs a promotion. Number 2. The Mandalorian Season 3. We pick up the threads of the story with the armorer leading a procession out of a cave onto a beach where a Mando clan is awaiting a ceremony to initiate a child in the way of the Order. Obviously, the showrunners scoured Hollywood to procure a child who could exude a rough-hewn, stoic presence. I'm just kidding. They booked Wesley Kimmel, nephew of late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. Just as Southern Californian Mando Nepo Baby receives his helmet, there is a sudden commotion as a dinosaur creature attacks. Our hero arrives to save the day, his ship heralded with an actually hilarious, cheesy trumpet fanfare. Hijinks ensue and Bo-Katan, Din Djarin and Grogu set out for the idyllic planet Plazir 15. The planet's rulers, Captain Bombardier and the Duchess, played by the gargantuan flute-playing background singer berating Lizzo, ask for their help. After a lengthy skirmish between the Mandalorians and Beskar-enhanced stormtroopers, Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and Grogu make a final stand against Gideon and his Praetorian guards. All of this is convoluted, oversaturated plot development encompassing far too much material, stakes on too vast a scale, too many ancillary characters, and farcical action. They could just have left The Mandalorian as a cool, intimate scale show for 5 seasons or more, where the titular character goes after marks, and we get interesting looks at the wider Star Wars universe. But they couldn't leave well alone, and now we have a bloated, histrionic mess of a show with no soul or character, and almost no remaining appeal. Number 3. Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion features Samuel L. Jackson as an ever more grizzled version of his eye-patch-adorned Nick Fury, the show adhering to the Hollywood trend of taking legacy male characters, deconstructing them, and making them broken-down, world-weary versions of themselves.
Stamp on your man. Give us more scenes to cringe to, and more shills to whinge to when cinemas are cold.
Secret Invasion is from the outset a clunky and tedious show that cleaves to formula characterized by lethargic performances, unengaging fight sequences, and huge swaths of exposition. The Skrulls, the race of shape-shifting aliens who first arrived on Earth in the 1990s, posing as humans in order to destabilize civilization, have orchestrated a series of global terror attacks in an effort to bring about planetary chaos. Not knowing who is a Skrull ought to be enthralling, a trope of tension that can be brought to great effect, as in The Thing, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or even V, but here there is no particular dread or anxious speculation. The series is defined and dogged by a lack of necessity. Where it might have been quietly gripping, it flits between scenes of cleanly choreographed action and lethargic exchanges. When Emilia Clarke shape-shifted during a climactic fight scene to make her arm look like Drax's from the Guardians of the Galaxy, it struck many as a last straw. The show flopped like a boxer coerced by the Mafia into throwing the match in the first round. Number 4. Cleopatra. It's hard to believe in an entertainment culture that has descended into bitter tribalism, where people en masse invest their time, sense of identity, and self-worth into sticking up for whatever effluent streams out of the pipe each week from the studios. There could still be films or shows that somehow earn almost universal disdain. But every so often something tumbles out the garbage chute that earns that dubious distinction, and Netflix's Queen Cleopatra is a prime example. calling itself a documentary series, but in reality about as faithful to historical accuracy as the Flintstones. In attempting to rewrite historical facts to suit a 21st century political narrative, the show has earned a 14% rating among the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a stunning 1% from user reviews. The series, African Queens, produced and narrated by the scarcely bearable Jada Pinkett Smith, depicts the Egyptian pharaoh Cleopatra, who was played by a black actress, which is something of a liberty given the historical record, statues, pictures, and coins indicate that she was far more likely to have been Greek Macedonian. The reason the Cleopatra controversy mattered is to do with the writing of history, especially that based on the critical examination of sources, and the synthesis of those details into a narrative that stands the test of critical examination. Modern films and TV showrunners have fewer inhibitions and guardrails in dispensing with historical accuracy and portraying the past as they wish it was, as it would have been more suitably nice to have been, to repurpose it to be more inclusively positive for a modern audience. And flowing from this trend of fictional reimagining, we have a further step into relativism with the African Queen series. Up until recently, showrunners have usually pushed back against criticism of diverse casting choices by framing the critics as fragile and out of touch and all in their feelings. But in this case, it was Egyptians who accused the Netflix documentary of failing to depict their cultural icon authentically. The whole thing was a smugly amateurish liberty that deservedly got called out and ripped a new one by a sensible majority. Number 5. Robin Hood. Robin Hood is described as a modernized reimagining of the English legend of Robin Hood, created by music video director and filmmaker Director X. The series follows the young, female, black, bisexual activist rapper Robin and her anti-authoritarian masked hip-hop band The Hood, living in a working-class area in the fictional city of New Nottingham. The decision to change the character of Robin Hood from a man to a young woman was made when Director X made a presentation to Kathleen Meek, manager of original content at Chorus Entertainment. Meek said it was a massive priority for us to get this made, stating that everything about it, the team, the authenticity, felt like such a fresh way into the Robin Hood legend. While the protagonists are people of color and the antagonists are primarily white, Director X stated that the show was not written with any race in mind. The titular Robin and her crew are making a music video after dark when their innocent creative expression is interrupted by the police. Our heroes are revealed and we are treated to the music they have been making. We are then introduced to the Sheriff of New Nottingham, the whitest antagonist conceivable, with ginger hair and caustic demeanor pivoting between snaring conceitedness and ball-breaking domineering nastiness. And then we get properly introduced to Robin's crew, a plucky young girl and modern guy, dopily amenable, always smiling, self-deprecatingly benign, unassertive and jovially sexless. The plucky teenage girl is also a blazing talent as a technology genius and is designing a jet-propelled backpack. Sure, you may have seen Wakanda Forever, which features a stunning and brave teenage girl technology genius, and you may have seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which also features a stunning and brave teenage girl technology genius. But what you weren't anticipating was that in the space of a year, you would see a third stunning and brave teenage girl technology genius. We then get introduced to the big bad, John Prince, who looks like white billionaire Richard Branson and is set on evicting the innocent people of Sherwood Towers from their homes. Robin's mum is shot and paralyzed for life by a cop. Now, ordinarily, such a moment of drama will be finely balanced to be as compelling as possible, there being some ambiguity about escalation, camera angles that enhance those ambiguities, and a real-life messiness that draws the viewer in. Director X has decided to bravely subvert all of those expectations and make the shooting flagrant and unambiguously unjust in front of dozens of people. The gang then gets together and hatches a plan to steal the gold coins from John Prince's private penthouse office. Our heroes enter into a melee with the sheriff and John Prince, who, as a middle-aged business mogul, is also unaccountably adept at martial arts. All of this builds to an epic dramatic moment where Robin Hood draws down a bow and arrow from Prince's antique displays and wards off Prince and the sheriff. This moment of drama crests with a swell of intense music. This show is anti-culture, rehashing an established concept already done to death, reimagining it for present-day audiences, also done to death, filling it with unrestrained, shallow identity politics in lieu of any creativity, also done to death, and stashing it full of dead tropes, two-dimensional characters, two-dimensional on-the-nose cultural messaging, being aesthetically poor and overall cringeworthy in every way. It's just more contemporary dogshit from screenwriters whose real-life experiences are authentic and compelling in many ways, but aren't professional or talented enough to fill the yawning gulf between lived experience and creative execution. The show bombed harder than an Oscar Wilde production staged in Uganda. Number 6. Ahsoka.
Kathleen's male feminist screams himself in jerking fist. Cowboy had COVID in jizz. It's
Ahsoka takes place after the fall of the Empire, with the New Republic having risen to take its place. However, a plot is underway to find the last Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. The show fails to surmount the old Rise of Skywalker writing issues of a bullshit MacGuffin device, video game-style episodic fetch quests, and a whole vine worth of member berries. The wonderful Obelix-framed late Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll releases a strong female character named Lady Elspeth Morgan, a former Night Sister dressed like a semi-retired Kill Bill. We then cut to Ahsoka visiting the ruins of a temple. If we had already been through adventures with this character, seen her progress, endure and sacrifice and grow, then we might quite like her subdued, ironical manner. But being introduced to her as a main character like this, for most viewers at least, she is a flat and unengaging protagonist who acts within a very narrow demonstrative range. She descends into an inner sanctum and twists around some large extinguished cigarette sculptures and discovers a golden snitch from Harry Potter. We are introduced to General Syndulla, who is perpetually wearing a leather cap with industrial dark glasses, as if she has just come from driving a 1920s roadster or witnessing the trial detonation of the Manhattan Project. They speculate that if Thrawn has survived, then another character, a good guy named Ezra, may have survived as well. We then cut to a city that looks like Oz if reimagined by vulgarly ostentatious sheiks in Dubai. We cut to a spunky, headstrong, sassy, cool female character, Ahsoka's former apprentice, Sabine. She returns to her pad to watch an old hologram of her dear lost friend Ezra. They were like brother and sister, which goes without saying because this is Star Wars, and no strong, young female character could ever bear the encumbrance and compromises of a sexual relationship. There is then a confrontation heralded as the first on-screen inter-chick lightsaber duel, and then Sabine takes a kyber crystal-powered fat one straight through the belly. Ordinarily, this would result in a grueling struggle to revive from the brink of death, her internal organs cauterized, her entire insides subjected to catastrophic trauma, her spinal column hanging by a thread. But she's basically fine. The show then meanders to such an extent that you literally peer mordantly at the screen, trying to cajole yourself out of a descent into some kind of existential crisis. The vast, empty narrative expanses coming to substitute for or allude to some vaguer guilt about time running on, some portentous feeling of more abstract bleakness, the laziness and ineptitude and disinterest in the spirit of Star Wars of the writers, affecting your spirit too, rather as a parent's misery seeps into a child and subdues it. These vast swaths of nothingness are punctuated with spasms of fatuous action, including one sequence where, it is a shame for anyone to have to debase themselves to recount, Ahsoka's ship is preyed upon by a squad of fighters led by unblinking, Wurzel-Gummidge-haired girl, and Ahsoka steps out of her ship in a spacesuit to perform ludicrous gymnastics while taking out the opposing ships, and then hitches a ride with a pod of cosmos-spanning whales to where Thrawn and possibly Ezra are, and then Sabine finds Ezra, but because this is a Disney Star Wars show, subject to the de-sexing of contemporary writers, their reunion is not romantic, or even especially marked by tangible joy. And then Sabine helps Ezra leap across a massive expanse using the Force, because fuck Luke Skywalker learning the Force in a short time, Sabine can get the hang of it in even less time, because she's awesome. The show was the least watched of all the Disney Plus Star Wars crap. Number 7. The Fall of the House of Usher. The Fall of the House of Usher is an American gothic horror drama created by Mike Flanagan. Now, give me a second to recover my balance after the Earth was shaken off its axis by the collective global recoiling and twitching back of necks of incredulous people. I mean, this was the guy who gave us the 2018 breath of fresh air that was The Haunting of Hill House, right? Yes, it was, but Flanagan then gave us the ever-decreasing returns of The Haunting of Bly Manor in 2020, using the same formula of historical author, in this case Henry James and his Turn of the Screw, and placing it in a modern setting with lots of lesbianism and divers other sexual identities, giving it some maudlin modern preoccupations, and playing fast and loose with the source material, in a way that was neither a satisfactory homage nor especially notable reinvention. He then gave us the miniseries Midnight Mass. And again, I appreciate the global calorie and caffeine intake just diminished by 1% due to a collective spit take, and spurting out of mouthfuls of food at any critique of that. But no, Midnight Mass was initially a lot of fun and cohesive in tone and aesthetics, and had some great acting, but kind of petered out into a slightly schlocky stretching of credulity, and monologues longer than a teenage girl ponderously and stridently lecturing people about veganism and grievances to do with animal rights. In The Fall of the House of Usher, Roderick Usher, the corrupt CEO of Fortunato Pharmaceuticals, has lost all 6 of his children in a span of 2 weeks. He attends the funeral of his oldest 3 and later invites his nemesis, Assistant U.S. Attorney C. Auguste Dupin, to his childhood home to confess his crimes and reveal the reason behind his children's deaths. Everything about this Flanagan-devised material has worn thin. It is a show based on the semi-faithful, semi-bastardized writing of Edgar Allan Poe. He is using the same faces from many of his previous efforts, many facetiously, satirically sociopathic, and genres of horror, courtroom drama, thriller, historical saga, and comedy are mixed together into a narrative goulash. The overall feel is a show full of likable, excellent actors, in a show that's a little too indulgent, bloated, genre schizophrenic, and feels a bit like a Mike Flanagan show created by AI. Number 8. Loki Season 2. Loki Season 2's highlights, narrative innovations, character developments, character arcs, major plot points and advancements, and topics for discussion deserve an appropriate amount of consideration. Number 9. Velma. Remember Scooby-Doo from your childhood? Well, get ready to hate-watch a gratingly sardonic, new deconstructed iteration for the modern age. The characters in this show are horrible, self-absorbed, socially fretful or aloof, and the whole show is riven with that horrible modern thing. Quirky beats in which characters have their trite little foibles exposed and react overdramatically. The original show was about different young archetypes getting along. It was for kids, to tell them they could accomplish things by working together. Generations of youngsters could see someone like themselves hanging out with kids who were cooler, or straight-laced kids having no problem hanging out with stoner kids, or a nerdy girl being tolerated and respected. Kids could come home from school and watch a show where there were none of the stifling, difficult-to-navigate social boundaries of their daily lives. Velma depicts school with all its treacherous tribalism and cliques and stereotypes maximized, the exact opposite of the original spirit of Scooby-Doo. So, to take a show of escapist innocence, shunting it into a modern context defined by cynicism, adding gruesome body horror and identity issues around sexuality and the humid swelter of adolescent horniness, and shaping it for a generation whose childhood involved glancing up from their iPads whenever their attention was caught by the even faster flickering and brighter colors of the Nickelodeon channel, and who are used to a non-stop patter of modern prissy witticisms, well, the whole thing is lame and kind of sucks balls. Fred, the uncomplicated, amenable anchor of the original show, is now a narcissistically self-absorbed high school asshole, but is also a buffoon. Daphne is stuck up and conscious of her image. Shaggy has been divested of his perpetually scared, easily rattled hypochondriac qualities, literally the essential and most likable things about him. The diversity and representation of modern audiences, rather than being sensible and proportionate, is what I would call absolutist. Velma is Indian, Daphne is part Asian with red hair, and Shaggy, who is called Norval, is black. We're at the point where all the sarcastic speculation that a newly announced modern iteration of a show will feature certain kinds of diversity or gender swapping or sexual orientations actually turns out to be exactly right. It's a matter of life imitating memes. In discussing why they race-swapped Velma, Kaling said the essence of Velma is not necessarily tied to her whiteness, and I identify so much as her character, and I think so many people do, so it's like, yeah, let's make her Indian in this series. There's something to consider here, what I would term a whole-of-life self-insert, which means instead of just taking one or two elements of your life and imbuing them into a pre-existing property you've got your hands on, Kaling is taking the broad template of her life and background and putting it into the show wholesale, which may in some ways be a shortcut to comedy and character beats, but is also kind of indulgent. Modern shows of this ilk tend to do two unappealing things simultaneously. Make the characters tediously, neurotically, self-disparaging, self-conscious, susceptible to giving in to their more immature impulses, and seeing the world as a nexus of threats, jealousies, disappointments, and worries to fret over, with the idea of this being relatable, and then also have them, in interactions and confrontations, be sassy, snide, sarcastic, and melodramatically flighty, in ways that are supposed to be clever and witty. Both suck. This gaudy, irritating show, as a whole, sucks. Number 10. Queen Charlotte. Queen Charlotte, the latest Bridgerton installment, hangs on a minuscule scrap of historical speculation, the theory that German-born Charlotte of Middelburg-Strelitz had African ancestry. I know there are a lot of people who believe it's absolutely fact that she is from black Portuguese royalty, said the show's creator Shonda Rhimes. The idea that that would make her their first black royal was very interesting to me. Queen Charlotte begins with the disclaimer that it is a fiction inspired by fact, and that all liberties taken by the author are quite intentional. There turn out to be a shit ton of liberties. This prequel chronicles Charlotte's arranged marriage to George III in 1761, which blossoms into real love and ushers in a new era of racial unity in Britain. The Bridgerton extended universe has always taken a curious approach to race, but in Queen Charlotte it reaches bizarre levels. This parallel 18th century Britain contains many wealthy black people who apparently went to Eton and Oxford. Charlotte and George's union prompts what is dubbed the Great Experiment, bestowing upper-class titles and acceptance upon those posh people of colour, and therefore bridging Britain's racial divide. Racism is vanquished overnight, within the space of a dance to a string arrangement of an Alicia Keys track. With one party, George tells Charlotte, we have created more change, stepped forward more than Britain has in the last century. It's a puerile, flaky load of bollocks. The characters are inhabiting a kind of socio-cultural multiverse. This kind of utopian escapism risks coming to blur how things were with its simple imposition of fantasy equality in the past. You don't subvert racism by such candy floss reimagining. It's weird and dubious and takes indulgent liberties and exudes an intellectually and creatively feeble approach to the past. Those were the top 10 worst shows of 2023. Let me know if there were any heinous productions or grating misfires that irked you. In the meantime, I'm going to flagellate myself in penitence for my weakness of spirit in watching these shows and conduct a séance to try to exorcise the evil spirits from my TV.